North and South Korea have engaged in diplomatic talks following some threats of potential nuclear war due to Trump and his provocative tweets. Now, the Olympics are set to take place in South Korea. And interestingly enough, North Korea will have a role in the Olympics. And I'll give you the details on what they've agreed to so far. The two Koreas will actually compete in a unified team in the Olympics for the first time, though they have joined forces at other international sports before. Now, they haven't really decided which sport they will join in on, as one unified team. There's some speculation that it could be the hockey team. And South Korea's hockey team is not amused by that. And I'll tell you what they think in just a minute. North Korea will also send a delegation of more than 400, including 230 cheerleaders, 140 artists, and 30 Taekwondo fighters for a demonstration. Now, here's what South Korean athletes have to say about all of this. Our players are really nervous. We can only take 23 players to the Olympics. This is someone who represents the South Korea women's hockey team. And they thought the North Koreans are going to come in and take our spots. So there's a little bit of pushback, but understand that a lot of this really has to do with easing tensions among both countries and also trying to possibly enter negotiations regarding nuclear disarmament. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but there is historical precedent when it comes to this very issue involving South Korea and the United States. Back in 1987, about a year before the Olympics were set to take place in Seoul, there was a pretty terrible act of violence on the part of North Koreans. Two North Korean agents bombed a flight that mostly had South Korean workers on it. And you would think after that, relations are done. No one's interested in having any diplomatic talks. But Ronald Reagan, surprisingly, approached North Korea and said, look, I know you guys wanna, open up negotiations, have some diplomatic talks. You wanna maybe possibly have some role in the Olympics in Seoul. Why don't we have those discussions as long as you promise that you will not carry out an act of terror during the 1988 Olympics? So in the past, their acts of violence have been met with diplomatic talks. And so the only bargaining chip that they've always really had was bad behavior.
Well, Reagan encouraged a lot of terrorists. He negotiated with terrorists all the time, even he sold them weapons. Go look it up. Okay, but putting that aside, I generally really like this. I get the concern of those very specific people, the female ice hockey team. Yeah, the North Koreans might take some of their spots if they were going to be on a 23-person team and they could only have 23 people and half of them are now North Koreans. Well, there goes 11 or 12 people off that team, potentially, maybe, right? So the second thing that's a concern is apparently they were a pretty good team. North Koreans are not nearly as good in ice hockey, so there goes their chance of medaling, probably, but you never know. I've seen miracles on ice before. But come on, the issue of peace is so much larger than one hockey team. So I love the idea of bringing them together. And I know it's a small step. And the right wingers always scream, appeasement, right? No, you don't have to appease North Korea. You don't have to ease the sanctions. You don't have to say, hey, you know what, guys, everybody take a load off. Don't worry about North Korea and their bombs. No, you could be as vigilant as you were the day before. But to me, the most important part is they're gonna appear under one flag. That's a big step, and these steps matter. The closer you get to peace, the better off you are. The further away you are from peace, well, the worse off the whole world is. So I welcome this completely.
Yeah, look, I ultimately agree with you, but I definitely understand the other perspective, right? Which is, they have been carrying out missile tests and nuclear tests and all of that stuff that's been incredibly provocative and all that stuff. And to be met with kindness, it goes against what human instincts are. But I think that when it comes to international relations, you have to overcome whatever human instincts you have, because human instincts will lead to terrible outcomes. You have to tuck tail and do what's right in the name of peace. But at the same time, I don't know how this all ends. Okay, so the Olympics happen, and then what? they're not willing to stop their missile tests. They're not willing to stop with their provocative language about destroying the United States, destroying potentially South Korea, although those conversations have subsided a little bit. I mean, there needs to be a long-term solution. I'm not sure what that solution is.
So let me say the last two things about that. One is, yeah, you don't get to make peace with your allies. You're already at peace with them. You make peace with your enemies. That's why it's really, really hard. So when Jimmy Carter did one of the greatest things a US president has ever done, he brought peace to the Middle East between Egypt and Israel. Egypt was the top enemy of Israel at the time and the strongest one. And what did he do? He put their two leaders at Camp David together. And they didn't want to be there. They tried to take helicopter rides out of there over and over again. And it was really difficult. And Begin and Sadat didn't like each other. Their countries didn't like each other. That's why they were at war. And they didn't want to do the deal. And in the deal, they gave up things they didn't want to give up. And it was super hard. But the first step was an important step, maybe the most important step. He brought them to Camp David. They began to talk. And that's how things go. So here we are taking a first step. And the second point I want to make is, what's the alternative? We say, no, we're not going to let you into the Olympics with South Korea. We're not going to let you onto the ice hockey team. Well, you made the situation even more hostile, driving them to even more provocative talk and more missile tests.
That's what I mean when I say that their bad behavior happens to be like the one bargaining chip that they have. And it sucks that it's working out that way. But again, ultimately, I agree with you. I mean, this is the best way to handle it, especially considering the fact that you don't want any type of threat during the Winter Olympics. And if North Korea is playing a role, there isn't going to be a threat.
And look, I'm less concerned about that as I am, although I'm very concerned about it, as overall peace in the region. And so, look, I don't want anyone to think that anyone should be naive about the North Koreans. Like, oh, Kim Jong-un says he'll play hockey with you, then I'm sure they're fine. No, they still have concentration camps in North Korea. They're still treating their population in the most grotesque ways possible, let alone threatening South Korea, Japan. And Japan is very skeptical and very rightfully so. Right. Remain skeptical, okay, but at the same time, take that first step towards peace. If you want to get the whole Young Turks show every single day, become a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And once you do, you'll be saying,
I'm like a smart person.
Or you might say,
I think it's weird.
Or you might say,
oops.
No, that won't be that one. It won't be that one. It'll be great, trust me. tytnetwork.com/join.